Clay, I know you're a huge fan of Harry Houdini, right?
I am.
You know what my favorite part about Houdini is? Besides
what's that?
Well, besides the outrageous escapes and the death-defying stunts and all that stuff, the fact that he believed in himself so strongly, he let a professional boxer kill him at the end of his life.
Yeah. To be fair, he wasn't ready.
Is that his widow's story or something like that, or is that something
that is supposedly the story? Is that he
wasn't ready?
Yeah, he was famous for saying that he could take a punch, he could take anybody's punch and come away unfazed.
Yeah,
and because he was this little slight looking dude, but if you've ever seen that picture of him where he's in chains, wearing nothing but the chains, the dude was ripped. He was in unbelievable shape, and so you set yourself up, you ready your ab muscles, you can take a pretty hard punch, but he was not ready, and the guy hit him before he had a chance to prepare. And it's actually kind of a misnomer that's what caused his death. That was the assumed link, but if I remember correctly, that is not actually the thing that like burst his appendix. I think it was actually it was just a horrible coincidence that they happened to overlap on that thing. If I remember correctly.
Wait, do you mean that he was sick with appendicitis and then he got punched, or the punch was totally separate from, like, if he had not been sick with appendicitis and the punch might not have killed him, or is it just that they're totally disconnected from each other?
I think they're actually totally disconnected, but I could be completely wrong. It's been a long time since I've done any reading about that. So
just don't let professional boxers punch you in the stomach, I think, is really the main takeaway.
I actually don't know if he was a professional boxer. I think he was like a kid from the university.
I think he was a student collegiate boxer. So he's a professional boxer. Like he's a boxer, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and also the thing that killed him wasn't the fact that he got punched in the side. It was that even after he got appendicitis or whatever it was,
he didn't go to a hospital.
He continued working for like a month or something. As he's like sweating, shaking to death while he's trying to get these handcuffs off on stage as like a 55-year-old man. So it wasn't just the punch. It's like how they say it's not the gun that kills you, it's the bullets.
Sure. Guns don't kill people. People kill people, Clay.
Exactly.
Do you still have your appendix?
I do. Yes.
Yeah, I do too. My wife doesn't. She's the only person I know who doesn't have an appendix. It seems like it's an old timey thing to get your appendix taken out.
What an elite asshole.
I know, really.
Do you have your tonsils?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Don't have my wisdom teeth.
I have some of them.
Mm-hmm. They took out two.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to go get your medical history and we can just
well, let's pull a Phlox. I'll load it up on the OBS screen here and people can look at it. That patient gateway is just so damn handy. Let's move into our discussion of Shadows of Pajem, which is the next episode of Star Trek Enterprise we're going to be talking about. So we'll take a break, we'll play a clip, and then we'll come back and we'll break it down.
I just spoke with Admiral Forrest. There's no easy way to say this. The Andorians destroyed the sanctuary at Pajem.
Were there any survivors?
Fortunately, the monks and the intelligence operatives were given advance warning. They're fine.
Was there time to remove any of the relics?
I don't know.
All right, so Shadows of Pajem, which always makes me think of pajamas, but it's the 15th episode of the first season of Star Trek Enterprise, aired on February 6, 2002. Teleplay goes to Mike Sussman and Phyllis Strong. Story goes to Rick Berman and Brennan Braga. Directed by Mike Vehar. The in-universe date is October 2151. In this episode, Archer and T'Pol are taken prisoner during an away mission on a war-torn planet in the Coridan system. And here we are to talk about it. It's the continuation of Broken Bow. Well, I guess obviously it's a continuation of Andorian incident, but I guess it would also be considered a continuation of Broken Bow, which kind of ties into all that stuff. And I guess I'll lead this off to you, Clay, with this episode actually left me fairly conflicted about the direction of the series because I don't know if Enterprise should more strongly embrace serialization. However, at the same time, I think that their serialization if they were continuing it in the way that they do it in these episodes, including this one, Shadows of Pajem, is not very good. So I don't know if they're ready to do it yet. But at the same time, having this continuing storyline actually made me feel like, oh, the series could actually do something with this. Like there's potential here that they're not really tapping into. But at the same time, this is a far cry from DS9's serialized storytelling. It's really clumsy in a lot of ways, and I think that we'll break down a lot of them. But I don't know what you thought about that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I thought some of it was kind of I think the serialized thread that they've been doing through even the episodic episodes that I've really enjoyed is this conflict and semi-distrust of the Vulcans. That stuff has been really fun because it's been treating those characters, or that species rather, in a way that they've never really been portrayed before.
Yeah. Counter to our complaints about the Klingons in the last episode, who are the same as they always are. The Vulcans are different.
But I feel like this was kind of a pretty weak way to continue those threads going on. Like I actually really liked the idea of going to this planet that ends up being semi-occupied, or at least the ruling government is funded by your allies.
Yeah.
That was pretty interesting.
It's interesting how backgrounded that conflict is, really. It's like it's not the point of anything, really, except for the fact that it sets up you getting captured by them. But the crew themselves are not impacted by this civil war that's brewing on this planet. Yeah,
they mention it like twice, and then it just turns into an excuse to have T'Pol fall boob first into Archer's face.
We're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to that scene. But before we do, I don't mean to cut you off, but I have a real problem with the way the Vulcans are portrayed in this series. I don't think this is very good because, all right, I
think they're laying it on a little thick. I like the idea, but they are, after this episode, they are borderline villains.
I think it's even... I think it's even more like fundamental to their portrayal here. Like this is a prequel series, right? So if you're watching this, you already likely have a sense of what the Vulcans are supposed to be, right? So when you're operating that space, I think if you're going to change them fairly drastically, which I would argue that Enterprise is changing them fairly drastically, you kind of have to set up the reason why they're being changed this way. Like there has to be lines of dialogue that explains that 100 years ago, the Vulcans actually had this kind of a mentality and things like that. Because the problem that I have is that all the Vulcans seem way too emotional. They're way too emotional. All of them are like, either I can't tell if the actors portraying them are not doing a good job and they're making them seem too emotional, or I run into this weird space where there's that scene in this one where Trip and Reed are talking to the other Vulcan captain who comes onto the Enterprise to tell them of their mission. And that guy seems Vulcanish, but at the same time, all the human characters are yelling at the Vulcans, going like, you knew this was going to be a setup, and you're just pissed off because you can't do this, and you're going to backfire, and you're psychosexual sadists who are into this stuff. And it's like, where's all this coming from? Like, why do the humans think that the Vulcans are so easily swayed by emotion in all of these? Some fireworks outside. Why the Vulcans are so easily swayed by emotions? It doesn't make any sense to me because...
Well, you get into an argument, and you say things you don't mean, and...
It all comes back to haunt you.
Yeah, you start taking little kernels of things you're annoyed with and blowing them out of proportion.
I think the Vulcans are not good in this series. If they're going to do this to them, I need a reason as to why they're acting so strangely in this. And am I wrong? Are the Vulcans not being emotional? That opening guy, when he's talking to the Admiral in that opening scene, is basically pounding his fist on the table, going like, this is unacceptable to do. It's like, the Vulcans shouldn't care.
Yeah. Do you think it's a matter of the Vulcans having more screen time than they have traditionally? Because I feel like with a character or a set of characters whose thing is we don't really have emotion, I feel like that's a lot easier to wrangle when you are on screen less.
Right. It's harder for actors to portray them constantly without emotion, and I'll grant them that. But the script is drawing attention to it by having all the human characters like Trip and Archer constantly accuse the Vulcans of being emotional in their reactions to things.
Sure.
But I'm not getting the sense that those characters are wrong about that. I think the show thinks that the Vulcans are acting irrationally, and I don't know why they would be doing that in this case. You know what I mean? So you're fundamentally... Because I think there's drama just in the fact that if the humans are overly emotional and they are tripping over themselves to try to deal with the Vulcans, and the Vulcans are just acting completely cold about it, I don't think you need to play up the Vulcans as this like vindictive species that's always out to sort of underhandedly deal with the humans for some reason. It seems you can focus the drama on the humans' desire to break free. And that's one thing. And I think that's a better way to approach it than to have the Vulcans being these like shadow puppet masters who are pulling the strings and doing all this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably more appropriate, but less interesting.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Or engaging to treat them as less the possibly malicious controller, puppet master, and more like the just aloof parent, you know?
Yeah.
So I can kind of understand, but yeah, at the same time, you'd think that they would not. It is interesting to have most of the arguments with any Vulcan character on this show devolve into the human saying it's because you're actually full of shit. You actually have tons of feelings that you don't want to express them or something.
Every argument ends that way. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. Oh, but this one, I don't blame them because I mean they probably made great beer at that monastery. So.
You can't have a bunch of monks together without some beer brewing going on. It's just unacceptable in any galaxy, any side of the solar system or whatever.
When Archer tells T'Pol what's going on, and she's like, "Did they destroy the beer?"
T'Pol, you mentioned T'Pol, but I think T'Pol suffers from what I'm talking about a lot in these examples. Like this episode is built around a plot of T'Pol not wanting to go back to Vulcan or being happy to be with the humans and stuff like that. And I think it's just it's a weak plot, even down to the ending where she jumps and takes a bullet, and it feels like it technically makes sense, but it doesn't emotionally make sense. That's why she gets to stay, because she saved this other Vulcan captain. Like, I just think it all ties into the fact that if they're not going to approach the Vulcans and expose what this show thinks the Vulcans are or what they're up to, if they are different, I'm fine with them being different, but you have to kind of lay the case as to why they're different in this setup. I think T'Pol is suffering as a character because I don't know how big of a change she's undergoing, because she doesn't seem more human, because all the Vulcans seem human at this point. So is there supposed to be a split between her and the Vulcans, or is it she's just acting like the rest of them? Is that supposed to be intentional? I can't tell. Yeah.
It seems like that they're trying to go for T'Pol being the hard-ass Vulcan who is won over to the more human side of things. But she actually seems more Vulcan than a lot of the people that the other Vulcans they deal with.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's tough to tell what exactly they're trying to do. And I thought having her jump and save that dude's life and take a shot for him, I don't really know. It's just that just seemed really weird to me. Like that
it seems random. It's very random. Yeah.
Yeah. Like thematically, it didn't really make a lot of sense, because it's not like T'Pol was saying that she didn't want to go and she was didn't care about the Vulcan cat. You know, it's not. Or
like even from the Vulcan point of view, they don't think that she's not not self-sufficient, but the Vulcans don't have a point of view other than we want to punish you for your mistake. So her saving them doesn't really seem like it rectifies the mistake. They're not pulling her off the case because they think that she doesn't have the character for it or something, and this proves to them that she's okay. They're doing it because of a vindictiveness that, or at least we're told it's vindictiveness, because you don't really get a sense of it from any of the Vulcan characters.
Yeah, and I mean it is only there. It doesn't tie in thematically at all, because it's only there to injure her so Archer can blow smoke up the ass of the Vulcan guy to get him to back off and let her stay.
Yep.
I recently discovered where that phrase comes from? It's disgusting. Blow smoke up your ass.
Did you mention that? I saw that for some reason. What is it?
It's it's an antiquated way to check corpse to see if they're really dead.
Yes.
Is to give them a tobacco enema.
Why do I know that?
To literally take a tube, smoke up some tobacco, and blow the smoke up their ass.
Was that on a TV show recently or something?
They just covered it on Last Podcast on the Left. So that's why I know it.
Maybe they tweeted about it. That's fun. It's too bizarre, too random that I also know about that or whatever. But yeah, to blow smoke up someone's ass is the old timey way to tell if this guy's dead. It's better than cutting off their head, I suppose, to make sure that you know what's going on.
Yeah, you know why they stopped doing it? Because they needed to. It was developed during a time of cholera, where there's cholera outbreaks all over the place, and cholera is, of course, shitting yourself to death.
Yeah,
and it was spreading cholera.
You did.
So they stopped doing it because the people doing it were spreading cholera. So,
well, at least they perfected the scientific method there at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've come a long way. I suppose Phlox would have a lot to say about that whole thing.
But what I was saying though is like it's not her saving that guy is not some grand statement about a change in her character standpoint through the episode or anything like that. It's just a matter of. It's just a reason to get her injured enough that they can, talk that dude into getting her to stay.
Yeah. Again, it feels like a kind of Discovery-esque plot point. It's a simplified version of what Discovery does, which is to change the situation enough where you then open a door to a resolution, but it doesn't feel like you really earned that resolution. It just feels like you technically arrived at the right spot. And to Paul and the Vulcans are really the big thing here. I just think that overall, if this show were to approach a more serialized storytelling method, I just don't think that they have a handle on what the universe is like here to make it really feel like you're satisfied in the way that things are going, because it all just feels a little bit like paint by numbers or flying by the seat of your pants in a lot of sense, and it's just not. I think all the bones are there. It's just, it doesn't sit well with me, mostly because I don't feel like they've given us a good idea of where the other species outside of humans are supposed to be, because I'm confused about their motivations a lot of the time.
Yeah, I would also agree with that in the way that they use the Andorians in this episode, because while I thought the introduction of the Andorians was fantastic, I thought that was really great where they, it's all in shadow and then you hear Jeffrey Combs's voice and then you just see the head tilt forward and the light hit the antenna.
Yeah, they're little antennas. Every time they get a shadow shot of the antennas, they make them wiggle a little bit. But yeah, I think Combs is better as Shran in this episode. He's got a little bit more of a personality than he did in the previous one. But he's just, definitely. It's just I don't really get a good sense of anything there. Like I understand there's hostilities between these people or whatever, but it's just I need something more there, and I just don't feel like it's really delivering on that, unfortunately.
Yeah, it is. I thought the way that they worked them back in was a little bit ham-fisted. It just seemed weird that they were all of a sudden showing up on this planet and. I don't know.
You can't sleep. Can't sleep.
Yeah, and in the way they show up, and then they have a guy on the inside.
Yeah.
Somehow. And then they help them get the Archer. Like, how did they know Archer? I don't know. It was kind of a weird way to get them back into the story.
Yeah, and I'm actually picking up on a lot of Discovery writing. Like, I wouldn't say that this show influenced Discovery, but the whole beat where T'Pol pretends to be the captain for little gain. No gain. There's no reason to lie about that. That just feels like it's I mentioned it just feels like Discovery in that it's like a twist for no particular reason. It's just like to keep you thinking that something's going to happen, and eventually it ends up not really meaning anything, which is too bad because I don't know. I just feel that the show itself feels like it's struggling to have something to say about this conflict. Therefore, it's like trying to lash out at all these little minor problems that they can throw into it to see what they're going to amplify the story with, and it doesn't end up working ever. All right, so let's just get into the strangest part of this episode, I think. It's kind of tangential to Paul's whole thing. Again, the show getting off on having characters who are not sexually interested in each other play up some kind of sex thing, where here Archer and T'Pol are tied together, and to untie her, he basically has to bend her over and eat her ass in front of the camera. Like there's no, I don't understand any of that stuff that's going on, because it's like the broken bow decontamination thing where Trip is like rubbing her down the whole time. There's no subtext to the scene beyond it's just kind of funny.
I was trying to figure out if there was supposed to be some sort of was that scene supposed to be sexy?
I don't think so. I don't think it's supposed to show them. No, I don't think it's a budding romance or anything like that. No.
Then that's so.
Some of it's comedy, like she falls on him and smothers him with her tits. Basically, it's like, and Archer's like, oh.
But still, that's the accent on 5 minutes of them like wriggling against each other and like face to face, like,
switching positions. A lot of position switching.
I don't
Can't
know.
get into a rhythm.
I find that fairly what's the word? Exploitative. Let's put it that way.
It is, yeah.
Because they're clearly doing it just because Jolene Blaylock is an attractive woman.
Yep.
And
wearing an outfit that demands something like this happen. Yeah.
Right. And if there's no intention there of setting up any sort of relationship or romance, like I thought that's why they were doing it in Broken Bow, was I thought it was supposed to be like, oh yeah, she's the, Vulcan Ice Queen and Trip is the happy-go-lucky Southern
boy.
Yeah. He's going to get through to her and blah, blah, blah. They're going to have a thing. But they haven't done anything with that, so I guess it was just an excuse to rub glitter on each other.
Yeah,
but it was kind of funny, intentional or otherwise. That scene when they're talking and they're trying to work it out, because it reminded me of one of the Naked Gun movies where he's dancing with, I think, Priscilla Presley, and they're having this like really intense conversation. But their dance goes from like a sexy waltz into like ridiculousness. So they're like staring at each other straight in the eyes, talking about serious stuff while they're going like, doing maraca hands and like doing weird chest thrusts and stuff. That's a weird scene.
It's tremendously strange. I think it's strange all the way from the shot, the cinematography, the like direction choices that they make, down to the lack of any subtext to that is really strange. Like that feels like it's a scene built around those characters are tied together for 20 minutes in this episode, and they come to terms with their why he wants her to stay and why she wants to stay or whatever. And they don't even really broach the subject at all. Like they kind of talk about it, but not in any way that's illuminating as to what T'Pol actually thinks about it.
Yeah, I thought that scene ultimately was probably the best scene in the show, just because it's another one where I thought they did a pretty good job of doing character conversations about stuff.
I think it's a good character episode, actually. I like the not to distract you, I like the scenes on Enterprise with everyone except T'Pol and Archer on it. I felt like those characters have never had a chance in extended sequence to talk to each other, and they did a pretty good job.
Yeah, no, I thought that stuff was good too. Although I did find it funny at the beginning, where overall this episode is questionable in the way that it handles its female characters. At the beginning, when Archer's like, "Yeah, I guess I'll just take Hoshi down there with me," and Trip's like, "Oh, really?" And then Archer's like, "No, I'm not taking a girl. You can't. Of course, I'm taking you."
Bros before hoes, Trip.
Yeah, no, I'm not taking her. What is she gonna do? Make him a sandwich.
She's scared. She's scared of going on away missions. Can't take her. It is. Yeah, I mean, we talked about that in Broken Bow, the good old boy attitude. It's another opportunity. It's another thing where I just don't feel that the show is really commenting on that. It's not really saying anything about these things, which is the problem with it, because it's totally fine to have those scenes if you're showing them as some sort of like preliminary step in humanity. Like they aren't quite at the 24th century version of humanity, so there's still these kind of like lingering sexism or like misogyny type things. But the show is not really about that. Instead, you just get, it's by far the most exploitative of the Star Trek shows. Like we've always complained about how unsexy Trek is. This is the, like, it's so trying to be sexy, but it's still not sexy whatsoever. And it just comes across as really just her, like when she's like grinding her ass against Archer trying to spin around him. And he's like, turn and face me. I'm going to untie you. And also terrible knottsmanship on the hostage takers there. Really, that's awful.
Their second swing was a lot better, where they like essentially hog-tied them, much like, Houdini would be tied up. But yeah, that first one was essentially, the one wrap around the chest, around the chair that you can just shimmy yourself out of very quickly.
The funny thing about the second one is that I don't think the episode does a very good job of showing you how long they've been held in captivity. And I was thinking it's almost like an SNL sketch where Archer is like over the top reacting to having been locked up for half an hour. He's like, there's some rat feces on the ground. We can lick them up. Get some. He's like, you're gonna need your strength. And she's like, no.
I'm gonna need to chew through my own wrist to get enough blood to slick these ropes up if we're ever gonna get them off.
And T'Pol's like, we can just wait. I'm sure the Enterprise is gonna try to rescue us. Let's just hang out. What did you like this episode or not?
I think I did.
You sounded like you came in happy, and now you're kind of wavering off of it. I don't know. I thought
it was a good episode, but I'm just not sure about the use of the Andorians, and ultimately, I'm not sure about everything they do in it. But as far as I thought, it was an enjoyable episode. I didn't think it was any great shakes or anything. It seems well put together for the most part. This one probably has, if you really want to get nitpicky, it probably has the biggest script problems as far as things being too convenient or
the writing is obvious.
Yeah, ham-fistedly put, slamming different things into it.
Would you? To what I start off with, would you rather the show embrace more serialization, or would you prefer the episodic standalones at this point? This episode actually made me wonder if Star Trek can ever go back to fully episodic style.
Yeah. Based on this episode and the other episodes, of course, that's what we're doing here. I would probably say I'd be happier to see it go more serialized, because I think the episodic ones have been lackluster. I think what interested me in this one is the furthering of those character stories they've been doing with the Vulcans and now the Andorians. I think I thought it was going to be a more half and half episode when it started, that it was going to be more like, oh, we are dealing with this interesting situation where we have come down to this planet where the people who are welcoming us are being ruled essentially by the people who are our allies.
Yeah.
But they didn't really do that. There was not really, this was for all of the interesting setup and interesting character positioning, it was a very plot heavy show. It was just kind of like an action episode for the most part.
Yeah.
And there's not really a lot there other than the action.
It also resets everything to the status quo, unsatisfyingly.
Sure.
For the serialized aspects with the Andorians and the Vulcans, it just kind of ends with like, well, we'll see you in court, and everyone runs off in three different directions. And it's like, well, okay, like did no one really learn anything here? And I think that's what DS9 did much better. Like you ended the DS. Go ahead.
Do you remember? Have you watched through all of Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Do you remember when, out of nowhere, for no reason other than the fact that Jon Snow had his back to the wall against the White Walkers, where his half-zombie uncle shows up for 30 seconds?
Yes, the guy from the first season that you haven't seen in 7 years, yeah.
It kind of felt like that a little bit, where it's like, all right, well, I guess they're dealing with the Andorians, and here they are. And then they're gone again, and nothing has really changed, and there's no...
Yep.
Vulcans didn't learn anything.
Yep.
The humans,
maybe the Vulcans did, but it's unclear to me if they did, why they're doing these things that they're doing. The Andorians didn't learn anything.
You would think the arc of this episode would be T'Pol more or less choosing a side, I guess.
Yeah.
Or deciding to go against the Vulcan High Council in some, even incrementally, but that doesn't happen. It only happens after it's been done for her at the end. Like there's nothing really leading up to that final scene where she has changed her mind. I mean, she even says, like, when she wakes up, she's like, well, I better get my stuff and go, or something like that. Doesn't she? Or to that effect?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not always crazy about two-parters, but I feel that this episode could have been a two-part, because the problem with it is if T'Pol makes a change of heart, I think that you really need the planet civil war to be a part of that story, because there has to be something beyond just the machinations of these three species going about it, because there's nothing in those interactions that really let you sink your teeth into what T'Pol is thinking. But I think if you play up the plot line where the Vulcans are sort of holding a despotic rule in power, T'Pol has something to fight against there at that point.
Exactly.
And if you don't have that, she doesn't really have anything other than she feels sad that she has to leave the Enterprise, but at the same time, she won't admit that she feels sad, so you don't have a story there.
Right. And also, that uprising, I think, is doomed to fail, because that base had like 8 guys, I think.
Yeah.
maybe fewer.
They only wanted 40 guns. That's apparently all that they
wanted 40 guns. And there were 3 guys we saw in the jail cell itself, right? The main guy there, and he had like 2 buddies.
Yep.
And then let's be generous and say there was the guy who gets jumped when he comes in was a 4th guy. And then there were two other guys who were like standing watch outside that get jumped by Trip.
Are you counting the inside, the mole? The mole is there too?
No, I'm not going to count that guy.
Okay.
So you've got 6 people who on this base who are guarding it, when you've got Archer, T'Pol, Trip, Malcolm, the 3 Andorians, and then ultimately like 5 Vulcans to take down 6 guys.
They said it was a small uprising. They didn't even think it was worth bringing up. It's only 6 guys.
Apparently. Yeah. It's a weird thing to even get into, because even it's not even used in any interesting way, because they
You're talking about the civil uprising?
Yeah, or just the politics of that planet in general, because I don't even know. They talk to the head of the elite group, who doesn't really have anything interesting to say, and you don't get any vibe as to what's going on there. It's all based on
Tucker saying they live in a shanty town outside the main city. So you're supposed to be like, oh, clearly there's some sort of class structure difficulties here, yeah.
And the one guy who looks like Steven Tyler there, the lead guy, is like, the Vulcans, screw the Vulcans.
Yeah.
They're keeping us down because they give the rich people money, or I don't know. I wouldn't even say it's as complicated as Star Wars, which makes it that much more complicated because I don't actually know what's going on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's surprising how little universe building there is there. It all feels very much like it's just barely holding on to anything. It's too bad, because I would like to. As I said, I think that the bones are there for something interesting with all that stuff, but it's just not. Like, the Vulcans are too shaky, the Andorians are just angry, and that's about it. Because I honestly, I think it all comes down to the Vulcans, because the Andorian anger is based on the Vulcan portrayal, right? Like, everything off this series is stemming from how the Vulcans are portrayed, and I think that because the Vulcans are so bad, the human reaction to them and the Andorian reaction to them has no grounding to it, because you can't latch on to why they're upset with the Vulcans in the first place, because they're so inconsistently portrayed early on in Enterprise.
And also, you've got the Andorians entering into a conflict where they're fighting against another group who also hates the Vulcans.
Right.
So they have a guy on the inside with this uprising, but they clearly have no idea why this uprising is happening.
Right. Or why they don't align with those people, unless they say that they are aligned with them. But why would they have a mole at that point? You would just expose yourself and say that, yeah, we want to support you guys against the Vulcans. We hate them too.
Yeah. They could have done some sort of interesting, like, Cold War type thing and had the Andorians, supplying them with guns or money or something. But,
yeah. And Enterprise
and
continues.
That way, think about that. So if you get the Andorians who are down there and they are actually feeding materials and weapons and stuff to this uprising, and then Archer and T'Pol come down and they get captured, but the Andorians don't realize that's who's been captured at first. So then they reveal themselves and then they show up and it's like, oh, they've been captured. Now they are our hostages, but I owe this guy.
Right.
But I don't want to let him go because he's a pretty valuable hostage. And I've got a Vulcan here. Yep. So, it gives you stuff to work with instead of just a fairly stock capture and rescue story.
Yeah. It gives Shran's moral conflict a little bit of something there where, his whole thing for rescuing him is just like, now my debt is repaid. Like normally when the character with a debt repays it, it ties in a little bit better there. Like it doesn't feel like he's seeking this guy out in like 42nd Street or something to be like, I got to repay my debt. I got to find this guy.
Yes. I've been following you to every restaurant just to see if you choke on your food. So
he finally left his sunglasses on the table. I can chase him down and give them to him.
Yeah.
Enterprise, I think that's a good point, and I think that ties into the Vulcan point with Shran and everything. But
I can't wait to see how long it takes me to remember that his character's name is Shran.
Shran,
because it's gonna be a while.
He's in 8 episodes, so we're a quarter of the way through his Shraniness appearances in this show. Enterprise, another interesting thing they continue to do. Enterprise refuses to kill anyone. The monks had like 3 hours of warning to get out of there before the Andorians destroyed the city. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And it's also, the Vulcans have no emotional attachment to the temple, or they shouldn't. Like the Andorians doing that should mean nothing to the Vulcans. They'd be like, well, we have all the intellectual knowledge that we need from that place. Fuck them. Like, who cares? Like, well, that's the problem for me, really, is that like they refuse to build stakes through having the monks get wiped out, which would maybe add some gravitas to the situation with the Andorians. And also, the Vulcans having some sort of emotional attachment to Pajem doesn't ring true to me. That's not what they would care about.
Well, do they? The Vulcans have always been a fairly, oddly enough, religious people, though, right?
They're certainly spiritual, but I never got the sense that it depends on a physical place for them to be spiritual.
Sure. I did think it was a little weird when Archer was telling T'Pol what happened when she was like, people are fine.
So you're going to cry? You're going to cry now?
What about the relics? Are the relics okay?
Right.
Yeah, they're fine.
What about that one we threw down the hole and we knew that was in the same room? Is that thing okay?
They just rebuilt that giant face that leads to the basement.
Doesn't make any sense. I sound harsher on this episode than I actually am, but I was just I saw potential here. I saw something that Enterprise could do.
It felt to me closer to the second half of Broken Bow, where you had some interesting things going on, but it was kind of, given short shrift in favor of running around and shooting stuff. Yeah. All right, let's take a break. We'll play a quote from the episode, and then we'll come back. Also, go ahead. Sorry. I do find it, I don't know why I found it so frustrating that they spent 10 minutes, like, long form showing you Archer and T'Pol breaking out of their ropes, and then they immediately get captured again. I guess it makes sense, but I just found it like narratively frustrating. I'd be fine with it if their scene of them untying the knots was weighty. If there was something to that discussion, I'm fine with them getting caught again because they've had their conversation. But it was just why do you want to leave? Well, it seems like it's the logical thing. Okay. Untie this knot now. And then they stall there because they can't resolve their storyline at that point. It's just frustrating. The last point about it is just, I think it's too early in the series to play that T'Pol angle, really. Like I'm noticing the television structure where, because this character is on your TV show for the past 10 episodes, you're supposed to be like, the crew cannot do without her at this point, but it feels too early for that really like dramatic
Archer feels overly dramatic in being like, no, I can't lose you now. Not now, God damn it. Like, you do that a couple seasons in, you know? It just feels too early.
Or at least like at the end of the season or something.
Sure,
but,
season finale, something like that.
Yeah, this does feel, that does have some discovery in it where you are expected to care about the fate of a character who no one else seems to really be emoting with.
Yeah. They don't talk to her a lot. She's not a character that interacts in a lot of scenes with the other crew members.
Yeah, I mean, there's not even really a lot of Archer being conflicted about it, because you'd think Archer is being freed from. I guess is she being replaced, or is she just being removed?
No, being removed. I think they severed the whole relationship. They don't want to do it anymore.
Archer should be ecstatic about that.
The one thing that I thought was fascinating was Phlox's line about, you're not the first Vulcan to serve here, but no other Vulcans have been able to do it for as long as you have.
Right. Yeah.
That's a good line. That's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
I like that stuff. But
I can't wait till we see an animated series based on the other Vulcans who served with Starfleet before Enterprise.
4 Vulcans served in Starfleet. They only lasted 2 weeks. Let's hear their stories. Short trek. That's a short trek. Definitely a short trek.
Honestly, short trek, I'd be down for that. That would be an interesting short trek, I think.
The comedy angle of a Vulcan just being like happy-go-lucky, signing in for his first day, smash cut to him running off the ship, screaming about how chaotic and terrible they are at doing laundry or whatever.
Knowing short treks, it would be Vulcan shows up for his first day on the starship and finds out that his roommate is H. John Benjamin.
Yeah.
Who just like doesn't wash his socks or something.
Yep.
It's one of those. It's a base level thing like that instead of doing anything interesting, unfortunately.
Yeah. Let's take a break. We'll play a quote from the episode, come back, read some patron thoughts, and give our final thoughts about Shadows of Pajem.
You should have listened to the Vulcan. He warned you against doing anything foolish.
What the hell are you doing here?
Looking out for you pinkskins. If you had gone anywhere near that shuttle pod, you'd have been killed.
They left it in the open for you to find.
All right, everybody. So thank you very much for listening. If you want to support the show, if you enjoyed the content, you can go to patreon.com/thepensky-file. It's the best way to support us. A couple dollars a month. It gets you extra stuff, extra podcasts. We did a commentary video. There is some game stuff going on. There's about 70 extra podcasts you can listen to at this point. It's value, well worth it. And as always, our Captain tier supporters, the highest tier, get a special shout out. Special thank you goes to Alec DeWolf, Andrew Cherlog, Ben Douglas, Captain Brazen, Cardinal Doomsday, Chris Tinsley, Christian Michaels, Christian Pouch, Darth Moss, David Beermore, David K, Dwayne Hackett, Eric Johnson, Eric's Antoine, HH28, Jacob123, JK's Gamer, Joint Mango, Jordan Cooper, Kevin Lowry, Kevin Rice, Cal Barrett, Matt Courier 6, Matt Cutler, Matt Houston, Matt Ross, Mike Burnett, Mike Harris, Nathan Elliott, Neil Brennan, Nick Sergi, Russell Elwood, Sam Bucaster, Grim Santos, Sean, Stephen Minton, Tarek Latif, Tom Howells, Vault 13 Hero. Thank you very much, guys, for supporting
You got to do that like Ace Ventura and go.
Alrighty then.
Do it in one big breath.
I have to come up with a new system here. I don't know if that's a time effective thing to do. I'll have to come up with something to reward the Captain tier for and take away that maybe at this point. You guys are obviously appreciated, but I'd say give me 3 breaths.
Yeah, we want to give you less stuff. You're
Basically.
Appreciated that, but we want to give you less stuff.
It's tax free. That's it. Let's go to patron thoughts. Losing track of what I'm talking about here. Matthew Ross says, Shadows, this is the first one. Shadows of Pajem. Archer's decisions have an actual cost, straining the Earth-Vulcan alliance. T'Pol being recalled for her part in the Pajem incident seems logical, as well as Earth's ability to stand up to the Vulcans' arrogance, which is more than on display. But the Vulcans are right. Archer's exploratory bunglings are not a good sell for humanity's talents. So Archer heads to Coridan to see what else he could break. We check off our fan service list as Coridan directly ties to TOS's journey to Babel. Okay, that makes sense. The name sounded familiar. I didn't recognize it, though. The insurrection is very generic, even with the appearance of Shran, hinting at a wider proxy war with the Vulcans. Archer and T'Pol untying each other as a spandex suit removed from the decon chamber. Why does Enterprise have only 15 phase pistols for a crew of 83? How many other things are they missing? In a rescue party of 2? Seriously? The sniping between our hero races is what makes the episode enjoyable to a degree. It's not quite time for Federation Assemble. The feel-good ending just needed a freeze take with Phlox and Archer laughing as T'Pol stays aboard. Point Extra G says, consequences. We get to see that Archer's decisions have ramifications. It would be consequences for him directly if they weren't for it would be consequences for him directly if it weren't for plot convenience. They managed to wiggle their way out of them. I like seeing Shran again. His reasons for helping Archer are not only comical, not sleeping well, but also show that despite his antagonistic tendencies, there's a sense of honor in there somewhere. Definitely happy that we'll be seeing more of that guy.
I think, sorry, I was just going to say, I think that was the high point of the episode for me, was that it wasn't just, oh, the Andorians are back. It was tied directly into something that Enterprise had done and actions that were taken.
Yep.
But ultimately it didn't really do much with it.
I feel that when you resolve this episode, I feel that there has to be more tension between the Andorians and the humans beyond Shran just being kind of like, and that's it for our debt. Like I feel that the humans need a reason not to side with the Andorians, I think. And
yeah,
because it's very difficult. You have to balance this trifecta of power, right? And I don't know if this episode is doing that particularly well, between the Vulcans, the humans, and the Andorians.
Yeah. I don't get any sense of who the Andorians are other than Shran.
Sure.
Like I don't know what their species is doing. I don't even really know why they hate the Vulcans, honestly.
No, you're told that they're angry, but you don't know if they're angry because the Vulcans are dicks to them, is the problem, right? Like, you don't know if they're just generally angry people or if it's that they're all reacting to the Vulcans constantly. Yeah.
So they're kind of flying on not nostalgia points, but the fact that people know who they are is kind of carrying them at this point.
Yes. If they were they're honestly no more developed than the Suliban, and the Suliban are kind of a joke of this series. The shapeshifter time traveler guys.
Yeah. No. Hey, remember in season 2 of Discovery where they had that whole multi-episode plot thing about downloading the entire known knowledge of the universe from
the Google Drive from that orb. Yeah.
I don't know why I just thought of that. And I think it was because they did that and then just kind of forgot about it a couple episodes later.
The orb was, I'm not going to try to remember Discoveries. The orb was important there, wasn't it? Like it was, I can't remember.
It was Discovery had all the knowledge of human history, and then the Control was trying to get it from Discovery.
Right, because they picked it up from the orb, yeah. So.
It's relatable stakes is what I'm saying.
A latte librarian says, Shadows of Pajama, are they trying to give T'Pol and Archer sexual tension? It feels wrong. The boobs to the face bit made me cringe. And the objection to the Vulcans sending an extraction team seemed hypocritical when they've been thinking about doing just that for a scene or two before. Something about the life debt motivation didn't work for me, even though Combs did a good job. Was such a debt mentioned in the first episode he was in? He does. His final line is, I owe you a debt or something like that. I'm in your debt or something is Sharon's final thing.
You know, I was thinking about it, about the T'Pol thing, and this really is the most exploitative female-wise series so far. And I mean, I was
haven't
thinking,
seen Voyager. Haven't seen Voyager.
That's true. Yeah. Well, Voyager. Okay, sure. Jerry Ryan shows up eventually, but this. I don't know if they go to this lengths, but like even thinking back, I was thinking, well, they do the green skin alien thing on TOS, but there,
that's a culture. Is the thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Whether or not that's appropriate is whatever, or has aged well is whatever. But that is a culture and a level of exoticness that they're going for.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is taking the main female cast member on your show and literally rubbing the captain's face in her tits.
Yeah.
And like playing it off as a joke because she has no emotions, so she's not going to say it. You know, it's
right. She can't
really
be
weird.
She can't be sexually assaulted or this is not sexual assault or anything, but it's like they're taking advantage of her coldness.
Right. It's not sexual assault by the characters, but it's like arguably sexual assault by the writers.
Yeah, the writers.
If that makes sense. Because it's not a character thing that's happening. It is very much the hand of the writers.
They found a character that they can just slap the ass of whenever they want, and she's not going to complain about it, is basically the thing.
And it's really weird and it kind of creepy. And hopefully they don't keep doing that, because it would be It would be unfortunate if they did.
No, Blaylock's better than that too. It's not like
definitely,
it's not like she's some actress who just came in because they're like, your breasts are enormous and you got a great ass in this cat suit. Like, Blaylock is actually a solid actress on this series. So
yeah, I think she's been doing really well.
Yeah,
which is why I think it's that much more, disturbing when they do this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with Latte Librarian. I think that was a good summation of how I feel. Just feels wrong, cringy.
Yeah.
The life debt motivation isn't good enough for me. Combs is good, but he's still working with not much. I just feel like his performance is better here as Shran. Captain Brazen says, How much longer until we're at the fireworks factory? Honestly, there's not much here except a bunch of small world building and filler that leads to a pretty average action set piece. Not even the inclusion of Jeffrey Combs as Shran could save this story in the last 15 minutes. I did enjoy seeing him return if it was albeit a little contrived. Just take an Ambien and go to sleep, Shran. The hint of a proxy war between Andorians and Vulcans via the Coridans is interesting, but nothing more than the original mention. The seeds of the Federation are being planted as Enterprise's mission is slowly challenging the status quo for the Vulcans, Andorians, etc. as humans enter the galactic scene. I like that Archer's actions have consequences with T'Pol being recalled, but it actually would feel more genuine if she was actually removed for a time and then returned somehow. Oh well, gotta hit that reset button, I guess. 2 sleepless Andorians out of 5. Stefan Minton says, I do not care for this episode. So far, Enterprise has managed to give us some fine interaction between Archer and T'Pol, but here the scenes between the two of them just feel so tedious. And the less said about that game of Prison Twister, the better. Although I did laugh a bit when T'Pol fell on Archer's face. That kind of humor still works with me, I'm happy to report. I also think that they messed up the through line. Archer is constantly urging
So the high point of humor for him is like the I'd buy that for $1 guy from RoboCop.
He's going to appreciate all the pratfall comedy our visual YouTube podcast is now going to be able to bring to him. I'll slip on a banana peel if that ups our ratings. Yeah.
You should see, if you're not watching it, you should see all the different hats I try on as we do this now. And puppet show.
I know. That particular problem is then solved by T'Pol catching a bullet for a superior officer who saves her career out of reluctant gratitude while she is unconscious. Talk about agency. On the level of galactic politics, the episode could have been interesting, but they needed to outline the conflict in more detail for that to work. Too much is left unclear. Shran is on Coridan doing what exactly? Are the kidnappers legitimate freedom fighters or just a bunch of thugs? Are the Vulcans propping up an authoritarian regime because it suits their security interests? It's a muddy mess, and by the end of the episode, none of these issues are resolved and conveniently not even mentioned again. Oh well, they can't all be good. 2 bowls of gruel out of 5.
Yeah, I'm really starting to sour on this explicitly because of how they treat T'Pol. Because
you're still on T'Pol, I see.
Yeah, no, because I mean he mentioned it there at the end. Like the main conflict of the episode is T'Pol leaving the ship, and that gets resolved without her having a say, really.
Yeah, she's had surprisingly little impact on the series. She's only been prominent as Archer's foil a couple of times, really, and it's if the Vulcan human thing is the setup of the series, T'Pol needs to be the primary, the 1B character. Archer's 1A, and she's not.
Right. Yeah, and in this episode, she's just there to be pushed around, essentially, and she's just a piece on the board being pushed around. She has zero agency whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, isn't there a thing here? Like, I know I was cracking wise about Archer being there for half an hour and being like, I need to eat whatever food I can find to survive. But if you extended the timeline, right, and Archer starts to crack under the imprisonment a little bit, right? But T'Pol is still using her mindfulness techniques and is still like surviving through this okay. And there's a little bit of there's a moment there where you can show a kind of closeness between the two, because in the moment of Archer's weakness, T'Pol is still kind of a rock that's there for him. And it kind of opens his mind to the Vulcans a little bit. You can see goodness in the Vulcans in that way.
Sure.
And they don't care about that, you know? Yeah. Let's see. Neil Brennan, Shadows of Pajem. Hot damn. From the peachy shot of Archer's butt early on to T'Pol's breasts being used as a punchline, not to mention getting to enjoy Scott Bakula slurping cold porridge while tied up like the dirty boy that he is. This must be the horniest episode yet. What this show lacks in interesting characters and fresh storytelling, it makes up for it with the kind of sexuality that drives 11-year-old nerds wild. Sadly, I'm 35, so they just left me praying that my wife wouldn't walk in while I was watching this.
I mean, every line Jeffrey Combs delivers, he delivers it with like the smoldering intensity of someone who's just about to tear their shirt, the bodice off of the woman in front of them. And he's directing at Archer, so he's like, I haven't been able to sleep. I can't be in your debt. I need to put my hands on you.
He was slurping up that cord. He was just sticking. He's like, just give me a little bit of that porridge. It's just the desperation of eating it. 3 Bakula butt shots out of 5 from Neil. Kyle says, he's reverted his name back. Thank goodness this episode is in high definition because the last 15 minutes of Dark Shadows would make for poor SD viewing. I think this episode gets very close to being great, but ultimately falls short, although it's still pretty good. I wish it had expanded the political exploration of the quadrant rather than just pick up the threads of the previous installments and tie them in a nice little status quo bow at the end. The Coridan and their shipyard sound not only cool, but of galactic importance, and yet they're ultimately just the backdrop to a different conflict. I'm always happy when actor Gregory Itzin shows up in Star Trek, and he's good at playing a dickish Vulcan, or a Vulcans, if you will. I'm guessing Clay gives this one a high score just because of the mention of his hero, Harry Houdini. For me, it's a 4 out of 5.
4 out of 5, wow.
Powerful.
Wow.
Benjamin Espinoza says, this was a yummy Star Trek stew. Commando Vulcans, Andorians, the new Barley aliens, and Coridans, and even a Starfleet scene on Earth. I love the carryover consequences from the Andorian incident. Shran becomes instantly likable in this episode. The Archer T'Pol overly long, sexy bondage scene was over the top. I did like the food scene where Archer is eating his food like a dog, face first, and T'Pol uses her fingers, highlighting the differences and similarities in all beings put in a desperate situation. I really like Trip as a captain. Him and Archer are very G.W. Bush-like, and even the Vulcan commander stating, "We don't negotiate with terrorists" line was right from the headlines at the time. This one is a 4 out of 5 for me.
I was just going to say, I was thinking that when he said that too. I was like, knowing when this was produced.
I'm seeing a lot of contemporary references in this.
Which is good. Star Trek is the show to do that in.
Yep.
So.
It adds spice to it. It's a little bit, they haven't quite sorted out what they're feeling here, but we'll get into that more, I think, as these stories sort of cohere around things.
I'll be interested to see if there is any 2020 vision on how they handle that stuff, if whether or not it is a little bit too
corny,
gung-ho, corny and gung-ho than it would be at the time, because it reminds me of, I don't know if you ever read the comic book series The Ultimates. It was Marvel Comics started this new universe where they basically took all their whole universe and started it over from scratch. And so you had Ultimate X-Men, Ultimate Spider-Man, and the Avengers version was called The Ultimates. And it was it's where the idea of Sam Jackson as Nick Fury comes from there. A lot of the stuff that's in the movies comes from The Ultimates. But ironically, at the time, when you read The Ultimates, it is very much a post 9/11 comic book series, and so it's very gung-ho America. Like Captain America is just like he works for George W. Bush.
Yeah,
he's happy to do it. He's kind of a bit of a fascist.
Yeah,
but at the time it didn't play that way. Like there's even a scene where he's fighting this villain on top of a train. It's a very famous scene. And the guy says, "Why don't you just give up?" And then Captain America responds with "give up." And then you turn the page and you get a splash page that's just a shot of his face pointing to the A on his mask saying, "Do you think this A stands for France?"
These colors don't run.
Which is,
yeah.
And reading it now.
Did he really say France? He said
he did. Yes, he says, "I think this A stands for France." Yeah. And I went back and I read through it not too long ago, maybe about a year ago, and having that distance from when it came out, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they put this out. It is so scathingly indicting America and the American war machine, and it was, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah,
it's a very
Wait,
very
is it
political
satirical?
comic. It's satirical, yeah.
Oh,
But it's very much. I think the satire of it was lost at the time.
sure.
So looking back and reading it again, you're seeing all the stuff that was, and it was written by a guy named Mark Malone, who's Scottish. So he's not American, but he's commenting on all of this stuff that America's doing post 9/11.
Yeah.
And he's doing it in such a way where it seems like it's pro-America, but then given the time, you look back and you go, oh, this guy was seriously taking the piss out of everything this country was doing. And it's actually pretty impressive that he got away with it.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because DS9 obviously got to it early. They did their 9/11 episode 5 years early. Enterprise is going to be 2 years after 9/11 before they comment on it. So you'll see when that comes up. David Beardmore says, Shadows of Pajem, nice to see a follow-up to the Andorian incident. This episode is a part of a trend in Enterprise to show consequences of past episodes, as opposed to having everything reset each week. Outside of that, it's not my favorite episode, but it's always a pleasure to see Jeffrey Combs do his thing. And then that's it. Yep, that's it. Thank you very much, patrons, for leaving your thoughts about Shadows of Pajem. Clay, what are you going to give this one on our scale of 1 to 5?
I don't know. This is a tough one because I feel like first reaction is a 3, but after talking through it, I feel like it's a 2. But I also feel like a 2 is being too mean to it.
Yeah, 2 is what we gave the last one. What was the last one that we did? We just did
the snoring Klingons on the show.
Oh, Sleeping Dogs. Yeah, Sleeping Dogs. Sleeping Dogs is definitely a 2. Is this a 2?
Yeah, I don't think it is. I don't think I can comfortably give it a 2. It's a low 3.
It's a low 3 for me, I think, as well. Yeah, it's a low 3 mostly because I like the potential of this one. I see what Enterprise could do, and it doesn't want to do it, and it's very frustrating. And honestly, like we can just end it with the thing about I seriously wonder if Star Trek can do a episodic standalone at this point without I think that the best model for Star Trek going forward from this point would be a hybrid serial episodic model where there's something going on in the background, but they still have room to take a breather every once in a while. So it's not the relentlessness of Discovery and Picard, but it's not let's just repeat the same episodic stories that Star Trek has done 50 times before, because I'm starting to feel the repetition of those Star Trek stories. Like you're like, oh, this is exactly like that TNG and DS9 episode. Oh, this is exactly like that Voyager episode. They're just running out of space to do that.
Yeah, it's I don't think it's impossible.
Strange New Worlds is going to be episodic.
Yeah, I think as I've said previously, it's all about how you go about it. And if you do sort of the, for lack of a better term, the Highlander model, which is you take an idea and then you twist everything you can get out of that idea, then I think you can tell good stories that way. But
I think that depends on a serialized backdrop, though. You know, like you have to like severely limit your universe, I think, in order for that to work. Like if they just came out with a new Star Trek show that is basically Strange New Worlds, it's a starship going around, I think that you're not giving. You have to do the DS9 thing. You have to set it on a space station. You know, not exactly set it on a space station again, but you have to do something as drastic as. Like, it's kind of taken for granted, but it was a pretty ballsy thing to set DS9 on a space station. Like, that's a very different setting for the show from what we had been expecting. And I think that Strange New Worlds is not set up that way, but you would have to do something that really, really changes the kind of stories that you could possibly tell in that new Star Trek series. Fair.
Yeah, and I think, as we've talked about before, I think Enterprise was there conceptually to do that.
Yeah,
because you have the timeline, the time period it's set in allows you to essentially show what brings humans from humans into the Federation, what turns them into modern as in we as our
contemporary,
contemporary humans. Yeah, they don't words. It's late. contemporary humans into Starfleet and into what becomes the Federation, that outlook, that gives you a lot of leeway to do that stuff where it's like, okay, this episode is about Archer learning this lesson, which helps this way, or you see that his actions start to have consequences and stuff. I think you definitely can do that. Strange New Worlds, I don't know, unless they're going to come up with some sort of, it's probably going to be something like Christopher Pike, now ultimately knowing his own fate, needs to make every day count, and some bullshit like that.
Pay it forward, Pike, before you pass on.
Something like that. He has to teach the galaxy that he's a man of faith instead of science. Or whatever.
You remind me though. I think that the Enterprise characters are probably my least favorite cast of characters so far. We're still early. There's time for things to change, but
they don't really do anything.
They didn't take advantage of the situation. There needs to be sort of like race angles. There needs to be some sort of like there needs to be baser human bad ideas mixed into this crew.
I hate to generalize based on his accent, but make Trip into an asshole, like kind of a racist guy or something, or like give him more of a gross edge.
Racist towards the Vulcans. You can make it you can make it explicitly racist towards the Vulcans.
Yeah, and I mean he doesn't have to be an awful person, but awful people tend to awful people don't have a monopoly on awful feelings and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And like Malcolm, like I said, Malcolm should be more weapon hungry.
Hawkish. He should be a neoconservative hawk. It would make sense.
I can't think of any of the small words to use. So he should be really have the love.
He like bang bang. He shoot guns.
He like bang bang. He shoot at bad guy.
That's the problem. That's the problem. The characters don't have they don't have any basis because they're set up as already being pure Starfleet characters, and the setup of the show is not supposed to be that way. They're not supposed to be that way.
Yeah. And I mean, Archer, perfect opportunity to have someone who is, as we've said a million times, the proto version of the Starfleet captain. You get to see what turns him into someone like Kirk or someone like Picard.
Yeah.
But and I'm not convinced they're not doing that, because that you are getting to see bits, but I don't think they're leaning into it as hard as they could be.
Agreed. All right, so we'll both give it a 3. That's it for Shadows of Pajem. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. Patreon.com/ThePensky File. Patreon.com/ThePensky File if you want to support us. Otherwise, all the links are down below. ThePenskyFile.com/links. You can go there. I think that's it. Clay, do you have anything you want to say? You just had a Rotten Horror come out.
Yeah, we just had Ty West's House of the Devil, number 143 on the Rotten Tomatoes 200 best horror movies of all time list that we've been covering.
I'd seen that one before. I didn't recognize it until you started talking about it, but I've seen that one.
Did you have any thoughts on it?
I remembered liking it, but I remember thinking that it was all atmosphere by the end of it. Yeah. It was spooky and scary while I was watching it, but I don't remember anything really about it.
I think ultimately with that movie, it's at the time that it came out, it was a lot more revelatory than it is now. Yeah, because we talk about this on the show a bit. It was 2010, 2009, and the nostalgia mining of the 80s style hadn't quite started yet, at least not to the point that it is now. And they were kind of one of the first movies to really do that. And so I think at the time it seemed like it was a much more impressive style move than it would be now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we talk about that. Actually, Badass comes back next week.
Yep.
So we'll be back with season 3 as the Amazon Prime listing flies of Batman the Animated Series with me and Sean Murphy. So that should be fun.
How's there's only 3 seasons of Batman the Animated Series, isn't there?
There is 3 official series, but 3 official seasons, but the way that they're split up on DVD and other home video, it's broken into 4 because the first official season is
5 million episodes,
65 episodes. And we actually just in our recording, we just straddled the line between the end of the first season and the beginning of the second season.
Oh,
so it was, I believe, 65 for the first season. Then it was like 15 or 13 or 15 or something like that for season 2.
You guys already did 65 episodes of Batman?
Yeah.
Well, that went by
And
quick.
I know. Yeah, well,
Not yeah, but
if you think about when we started recording, it was like 3 years ago.
it was pre-Trump. You guys are talking.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
you're talking
point.
about the election.
Yeah, we started recording at least a year before the election.
Yeah, maybe that's not that. I'm just surprised you've done that many. I guess over the course of time, that's not that many. But I'm still surprised that you actually did 65 episodes of Batman. That's interesting.
Yeah, it goes a little. I mean, we could think about doing that for this show if you want, because on Badass we do 2 episodes of Batman every episode of the podcast. So.
I know that would kill me. I'd be so confused. I would be so confused.
No, and if you listen to Badass, you can probably hear it confusing us as well, because I'm sure there are episodes where we talk about the same thing we've talked about 25 episodes ago.
It's funny in this episode called Man Bat that Man Bat isn't actually in it. You're like, that is funny.
I did something similar to that where we were talking about what was coming up next, and it was a Mad Hatter episode. And I couldn't remember another Mad Hatter episode. So I said, I think this is the first time we've seen Mad Hatter. And Sean was like, no, we've seen him at least twice. Like, oh, okay.
It's a different time, different place. Guys, thank you very much for listening. Hope you enjoyed it. And we'll be back with, it's not even worth looking at, I think, because I don't, well, I'll hit the button. No, it's Shuttlepod 1, right? It must be Shuttlepod 1. We're going to be covering Braveheart in the next episode. So we'll see how it goes. I think it's Shuttlepod 1. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.